Hey everybody, this is Alex, and this is the version 2, movie 2 for the day, so we're doing our first like real dig in. We talked overviews last week about ZoomOSC, and Andy Coluccio is back, and we're going to be discussing going through the homework. There were some videos to watch. There were some challenges to take on, and some of you, I'm sure, took it on and watched those videos. And now we're moving into the Q&A. And we're recording on YouTube so that all of you can watch it, and for those of you who weren't able to make it, can still get to it. So Andy's going to be doing a little bit of show and tell, and then we're going to open it up to questions. It is super important that you ask the questions and vote on the questions. If you have a question about ZoomOSC, do not raise your digital hand. What you want to do is put it into Mukana. If you have right now, we're going to kind of shift gears to mostly that. We've kind of handled most of the housekeeping issues. So we're just going to kind of move forward and do the best we can. All right, Andy, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Alex. And it's so nice to see everybody again. Welcome back to our sort of second session here. I hope that you had a good week looking at the part of ZoomOSC that's talking about how to send a command from one application to ZoomOSC to control the meeting. That's kind of what we focused on in the first week. In our second week, we're going to be focusing on the reverse of that, having ZoomOSC send information back to the machines that you want to be able to use with it. And I'm excited to dive into some of the details on that. I'm going to spend just a quick, maybe 5 minutes max on some updates and admin for how to proceed here. And then we're going to dive into showcases for the sort of the homework assignment that we did. And then I'm going to do a quick primer on outputs in ZoomOSC, and then we're going to do questions for as long as I'm able to, as long as Alex will let me. So with that said, so this was a big week for us. We obviously, in addition to launching this program with office hours, we actually launched the software officially through our website, liminalet.com. And alongside of that, sort of by the numbers, we produced 50 pages of educational material. We produced 9, or I guess 8.5 YouTube videos, answered over 2,000 messages, both in Discord and in our Slack group, just to try to bring people up to speed on that. And we're really thankful for everybody who's kind of pitched in and helped out getting that set up. I can't emphasize enough how important some of the PDFs that we put out and some of the YouTube videos are if you're struggling to get started. We had people from our team who are not super technical actually create a document together that I went in and reviewed about a quick start for ZoomOSC. So it's just a 5-page document, and it talks about, it doesn't presume any knowledge of networking or anything like that. And I highly encourage you to give that another read. In terms of things that happened with the software this week, obviously as part of the official release of the software, we moved out of early access, which is the build that we gave out on Saturday, and we moved to the official release 4.0.1. So if you haven't updated to 4.0.1, go download that from our website. You don't have to do it right now. You won't need it for this session, but moving forward, it has some nice upgrades and fixes, lets you get into different types of meetings, things like that. It should make your life a little easier. And that's sort of a standard practice for us. We're probably going to release a new version of ZoomOSC every week, at least for the rest of the month. And then we might settle into a little bit more of a relaxed pace. But right now we're getting a lot of ideas and things like that we need to do to help smooth over the user experience. So we're working on that right now. With that said, I think let's dive into some showcases of the controllers. And Alex, maybe you can help me facilitate how we want to go about this. But I know some people built some really cool stuff this week, and I'd love to have a chance to have them show what they made and how they did it.
This is a good place to raise your digital hand. So if you have something you want to show off, then go ahead and raise your digital hand.
Sure. Let's look at Tucker. How did it go this week?
Go ahead, Tucker.
Awesome. Yeah. So I had a relatively low profile event this week that was a good candidate to test ZoomOSC and get into it. I played with ZoomOSC a couple of months ago, very briefly, and then kind of moved away from it into other workflows, kind of came back to this. No, you may not control my camera. All right. So I'm going to switch over here to my companion instance, and I'll talk just very, very briefly about some troubles I had, how I troubleshot them, and then moving forward. So here we go. So over here,
you're coming in just a little hot. If you can just bring
absolutely.
Your mic down.
Let's bring this
the
up.
cost of us not doing our mic checks.
And let's actually go here, and I'm just going to bring this down just a little bit. This is a story all about how is this a little bit better for you, Alex? Did not hear a response.
Yeah, good.
Perfect.
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. All right, so in this case, this was a really pretty quick run through, but I have commands for spot single spot, add spot. So if we're doing multi-spot, remove spot. I've got a video and microphone on for each person, a video and microphone off, and then a mic on and a mic off. And that enabled me to really go through an event that by the end of a 6-hour session, I was very worn out, very tired of the multi-clicks to get people up on screen. It allowed me to very quickly just run through it. I have a page per panel that I had, so I just stepped through pages as I moved through my panels, and it made it very, very straightforward. And then my system was Spotlit. I had some commands stacked up in the bottom left-hand corner. So when I needed to go straight back over to my vMix system to push content in, that's how I did it. When I was getting started, I had some issues with, was I actually sending the commands that I thought I was? And Protocol, Protokol, is a fantastic troubleshooting tool that I used. In this case, I'm going to hit a button and I do not see, it is listening on the ZoomOSC port of 9090. I hit a button, I do not get my response over here, and I say, oh no, got to figure this out. So I went through, and inside of Companion, which I recommend anybody that's starting with this, Companion is the cleanest way to start. I went in, I checked my OSC, hit edit. I went, okay, I'm on localhost, that's correct. Oh no, my port's wrong, 9095. I went in, set that to 9090, applied my changes, went back over to my test, fire it, there's my command. If you're troubleshooting, please do use a tool like this, because you'll see the actual command here and compare that command with the API to make sure you've got the appropriate command sending out. And that will be the end of what I talk about today. Thank you.
Thanks. That's awesome.
That's great. Fantastic. Go ahead, Alan. You have something to show, Alan? Can you hear us? I can't hear you.
Your Zoom mute is on, Alan.
And the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves.
Oh, that's my fault. All right, go ahead. We said it. We'll be more aggressive about that. Go. I forgot that Tucker was a co-host. Anyway, go ahead, Alan.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what I did is I went basically going for free here. I went into the BitFocus Companion, downloaded all of the software, set it up, and my spouse she's using the iPad for a Square transaction right now. So I basically have an iPad set up with the gallery and spotlight and various pins for meetings and so on. And it was relatively easy to do. Most of my questions would be about the companion app rather than the ZoomOSC app.
Right. Excellent. We'll go ahead and put any questions that you don't see in Mukana. Definitely throw them in there. Let's go ahead.
I was going to hold up the iPad, but it's now in a different room.
No worries. Thanks so much, Alan. Talak?
Okay.
Hi. So I don't know if I can share screen to show.
You should be able to. If you can't,
disabled participant screen sharing.
Go ahead. I'm not a co-host. The host just needs to make you a co-host. That's fine.
Mickey's doing it.
Okay. All right. So let me make sure I get the right thing up here. All right. Okay. Can people see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I built this in Isadora, and I was just playing around, not for any kind of real test show. The idea was to give myself controls so that I could switch back and forth between spotlighting myself and gallery, unspotlighting myself, muting myself, and then also sending myself, an audio control in order to turn myself up and down all in one spot. And then I began to try to think about other participants and adding spotlights to multi-spotlight, etc. And having to think a little bit more about all of that as I go forward, because I think really the bidirectionality is what I'm excited about getting into. In Isadora, and you guys have seen this from Andy a little bit, you just have an object that you say you put in that command from the API, and then it sends that out and does it. So I will not take any more time.
Oh no, crashed unexpectedly. All right, we'll figure that out.
All
Well,
right,
I think
thanks.
that happened because I wasn't in a meeting.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. Thanks a lot. Let's jump over to Terry.
Oh, okay. I'm unmuted now, and I will share my screen once you allow me to. So while that's underway, what I did is I built some automation using a development platform called Node-RED. It's a JavaScript low-code programming environment. I use it for venue management, turning on projectors. I can control my lighting. I can control my ATEM. I can control my video matrix switch with it. So
Terry, you're shareable now.
Okay, thank you. So I built the homework for the week on Node-RED. So let me just share my screen then. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep, okay. So in the one corner here, I've got a ZoomOSC session with 4 other homework clients running. So you see lots of me. I got to figure out how Andy does that stand-in dummy thing so that I don't see myself so much. But then I have the Node-RED Zoom interface here. And this is where I have, at the bottom, I've got the list of all the users, not me, but everybody else. So I can select a user and I can add a pin to it. I can select another user, add pin. I can unpin that user, go back to the first user, unpin that. I also can do similar sorts of things with Spotlight, which works. I just won't take your time to show it. I can change gallery view, speaker view, and also do things like mute everybody but myself. Got global controls for whether users can mute or unmute themselves. What else did I do? Oh, show and hide usernames. I added that in as well. So one could customize this to lots of different capabilities, just kind of playing around with what works best for a UI. So what else? Oh, I thought I'd just also show you what the code looks like. Kind of like Isadora, it's a graphical programming environment where you drop functions into things like here's all the buttons that I was just demonstrating. You can respond to programmatically to do whatever you want, basically. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. I know you posted that on GitHub, so thank you for doing that. It moves everybody forward. So that was really excellent.
Yeah, I've got some people are actively trying to use it too.
That's great. Great work. John Pruitt.
Thank you. If I can share my screen, I just want to show a little bit more of an everyman sort of thing that I was doing instead of, production, since I'm just a guy. Let's see here. Where's my Chrome browser? I'll just do desktop 3. Okay. So can you guys see it now?
Not yet.
We just see you.
Huh?
We just see you. Are you screen sharing?
Yeah, hit screen share, desktop 3. I have an exclamation point.
Maybe you can't see it.
It's the permissions in Mac.
Oh,
needs permission to do it.
Oh yeah, you need to.
Oh yeah, never mind then. Sorry.
Okay, we'll come back. Go ahead, Leland.
Oops, you're muted, Leland.
That's on you.
I think a couple
Can
of
you
us
hear me now?
unmute you. Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, you just
All right. I just want to make sure I'm okay. I did a couple of different things this time around. So I'm going to share my screen real quick to make it easy on all of you without doing a screen share. One of them was just simply using central control by mapping an APC 40 MK2 with the OSC command, the generic OSC build that he has available for commands here. Well, then as I close this other controller here. So basically what I did was I set up button feedbacks on this particular board. If you're familiar with it, I'll show it to you in just a minute on my keyboard. The way I was able to device map was to simply press buttons on the keyboard that I have, which is the control surface. I have a matrix of keys set up for a 25 panelist grid, 5 by 5, because I have a bank of keys that is a grid on the APC. So I've basically set up a gallery index value based on whichever button I choose within the gallery. I can instantly pin by the gallery index any individual on that 25 square grid. I can also handle any of the additional pins, a gallery index add pin to make a multi-view of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 players at a time. I can also automatically mute each individual of, say, the first 5 that I'm going to pin and use as a broadcast setup for those particular talents. I can mute those mics out. And that was just one run, but I ran into a few snags. One thing that I want to talk about with Andy on with this later is because those two, Joe DeMax and Andy, are getting together to work on templates for this. That'll be pretty amazing and outstanding. But this is the other project I was working on that you guys might be a little blown away by as it starts. This is OSC Pilot, and I built this out over the course of the last few days. It's not functional at this time because this is an interface used for a touch screen. It was put out by Deadmau 5 back in August. And the issue I'm having, Andy, is I can't get the OSC addresses. Here, let me show you something. If I pick on something here, right now, these are all pinned. Basically, what I'm doing is capturing an NDI feed of one screen, which is to my right. And that is basically a double monitor setup on Zoom. I have the speaker view coming into the upper left. This would allow me to turn on and off videos of the first 7 callers. I was going to have audio effects for bass, treble, and mid-range if you were to port the audio somewhere else. Mutes for the first 7 participants and volume controls as well. I was going to try to find a way that we could do feedback reference to either pitch. I can either pitch a button on the screen at the location in a gallery index of 0 through 24, or I could put a pad on this space and actually tilt upper left or lower right to pin it or spot it. Or if I could find a way to code an A1 sequence or a B2 sequence or a D3 sequence somewhere on a keypad, you could do it that way as well. This simply shows the gallery view out so that you can watch where your actual gallery feed from Zoom is at and where it's taking place. And if you wanted to add a spot, like, hey, you had the single spot A up, A1 would be on screen. Oh, excuse me, I got a little phlegm in my throat today. You could instantly add 2, instantly add 3. But if you wanted to go to spots and do multi-spots, you could build out A to B1, A to E1, A to F1, A to G1, whatever you wanted to do. So the question I have for Andy is this. If I want to make this a command in OSC to the address, the problem I have is I cannot add a space for the payload on this line. I've contacted the developer to find out why, but is there something I'm missing or a workaround of this that I just can't seem to figure out that I should know?
We're going to work a little more closely with OSC Pilot on
Awesome.
getting this up to speed and making this more intuitive. And once I have that, we'll produce a YouTube video. But OSC Pilot is a great application, and I just need to work with their developers a little more to understand how they intended it to be used. It's more similar to Touch OSC in the sense that it's about mapping buttons and faders to value outputs, so it doesn't think about chaining arguments as well. But it's a very small change in the back end to be able to get that to go.
Okay,
and
cool.
I think we'll shake hands on that and make something happen.
It's
Pressure
an
them.
amazing
Write the
interface.
developers. Write
If you
the developers.
saw, yes, if you saw what I can do with multi-views with that software alone, just to be able to build out any matter of complex multi-view and just simply use it as a screen share to any other input, it's amazing. It has layers upon layers that you just swipe through and you can set them up. It's literally drag and drop any component of a mixing board that you would want onto that screen anywhere you want it. So I'm going to play with it a lot.
Thanks, Leland. John, are you doing better now?
I think so. I gave it permissions.
Go ahead and
Host
give
is
it a shot.
disabled participant screen sharing. So if I could,
We got to make you a co-host.
Yeah, he's got it.
You got it.
all right, thank you. So I've got, the 6-button controller here. So what I did was I did toggles instead of on and off to save button space. And then I quickly did a hands up and hands down so that I could toggle my video on and off, pin me, mute me, that kind of stuff. Hands up and hands down, I got a question later about. So, but that's my simple little thing, just to prove anybody could do it. And I did it so that controls that I thought would be useful for me in meetings. So when I join a meeting, I can easily hit the buttons, and it works a lot better than the other way. So
that's awesome.
That's great.
I love that what we've seen here is we've seen people doing it in, large scale production, personal management, theatrical management, responsive feedback. That's all. I'm so lucky that we got just a sampling of all these different use cases. So thank you guys for sharing that. That's great.
And definitely just keep, we'll start these kind of looking at some of these as you build them, because I'm blown away. Just looking at wow, I didn't know some of these tools existed until I was 10 minutes ago that I knew 10 minutes old when I knew that. So anyway, incredible work. Go ahead, Andy.
Great. So this week, as part of our videos, I wanted to give you an overview of some of the things that I created, just if you're still thinking about things that you might want to do. So I created something in TouchOSC that let me have the gallery view laid out in front of me, and I could press any spot in the gallery view and pin the person in that spot to the second display. I created something in BitFocus Companion that let me hold a button on the companion to screen share a particular display and then release to stop sharing, which makes the sort of one of my biggest pet peeves in Zoom is how long it takes the presenter to be like, oh, I'm going to go find the window and I'm going to go, and it just kills the momentum of a conversation. So if you're able to give your presenters a Stream Deck with these things preloaded and they can just fire what they want to hit and release, I thought that would be helpful. And then the one that I created last night is probably what I'm most excited about. And this was the ability to use vMix with ZoomOSC to be able to, when you preview a virtual input, to pin what that input is supposed to represent on the second display of that ZoomOSC. And this will allow you to basically, by overloading the PTZ camera system, you can have all of your inputs callable as cameras inside of vMix, and you can pull them up. And I posted a demo of that at 2 a.m. because I couldn't help myself. So that was a lot of fun. And so I definitely would encourage you guys to check out those videos and see if you're still looking about some things we're going to make. Real quick, I wanted to prime us on what we're going to be doing for the next week, which is the other half of the application. So what you've seen so far is some application talking to ZoomOSC to get control of Zoom. But there's a whole other half to this ecosystem, which is ZoomOSC talking back to your applications to tell you about what's happening. Now, some of you have seen a little bit of this from me before with the lower third automatic titler. And I'm going to do a video this week about that and sort of polish it up and get it looking good. But there's this idea in ZoomOSC of outputs. And outputs are user focused, or they're focused on metadata. Just like there's user actions and global actions in ZoomOSC, there's the same sort of thing going on the output side. So one of the big improvements in ZoomOSC now is that we give you 4 pieces of information about somebody every time an event happens. So if somebody turns their video on, we tell you their target ID, their username, their position in the gallery view, and their Zoom ID. And then in some arguments when you do a request for somebody's mic volume or something like that, or somebody has an audio state or something like that is set, we'll additionally append information that is specific to that output that will follow. So if you ask somebody to list their screens or something like that, you'll get their Zoom ID and all of that we call the prefix of the output, and then the array of all of the information that follows either from calling up on a request or from an event. And so like I just said, there are 2 types of outputs as well. There are event-based outputs that are based on what's called the subscribe system. When you subscribe to something in ZoomOSC, you start to receive outputs about that. This is like when you want to have video on, video off, mute, unmute, active speaker, those sort of things. And that is set through a subscription level. The subscribe level is the subscribe command. It's also set through the user interface. And this allows you to basically say, hey, I want to hear about everybody in this meeting, which in a meeting with 200 people is quite a bit of data. And so sometimes you don't want to have all of those OSC packets just throwing out into the wilderness. So you can filter to target IDs, you can filter to panelists, you can filter to attendees. And this will help you sort of narrow that down a little bit more and make it more manageable on your input line in case you're doing a ton of processing and whatever integration you're making. But this will allow you to do what I showed last week about making the lower third with the text of the person who's speaking just by listening to the active speaker and taking their name and putting it in there. But it also lets you do things like if you wanted to have additional annotations on screen that were following, who was talking, or you wanted to start to create these pairings of outputs and inputs, like when an attendee raises their hand, promote them to panelist. That sounds like a familiar one that might be helpful in office hours. And that's how you do it. You use the output system to feed the input system, and you have them talk to each other. And that's one of the big questions that we got this week in personal messages was, hey, this is great, but am I really going to go build out an entire new pipeline for every event I want to produce? Well, no. But the answer is you use the output system to preset the device automatically when you join the Zoom call so that it is ready to work in the meeting that you're in. And that's the exciting part of the bidirectional communication. So I'm going to post another 10 videos this week about outputs to help you get set up. And of course, the assignment will go out tomorrow. We'll be doing some really exciting stuff just about parsing that data. I will tell you in advance, there are fewer applications that can take OSC in and out than things that we did last week that can just send things out. So this is probably going to be a good week to play around with programs like Isadora or Max that have that bidirectional communication. The BitFocus Companion, we have created an input system for it, and that's part of the beta. And we'll talk more about that. I know there's a bunch of questions that have come up about BitFocus Companion and the variables that we created. But that'll all be something that we'll get to this week. But this would be a good time to play with some of those node-based editors or things like that. Those of you who are getting really low level, maybe you can help out some of the folks who want to just use your applications that you're making or use your Isadora patches to get a sense of what's going on. I think that could be a helpful way for us to work. But that's all from me. I'm going to now answer questions for as long as I am able, or as long as Alex will let me.
No, we'll go. We'll go until we run out of energy. Can you define Max for folks? I think everyone knows what Isadora is, but I think where can they find Max?
Yeah, so Max, it used to be called Max MSP, and it started off as sort of an audio processing program, and now it's like Isadora. I would say it's sort of if there were two twins, one of them went to art school and it became Isadora, and one of them went to business school and it became Max. And so it's a little less user friendly, perhaps, but it's a little more robust and low level. So I'm sure somebody can put a link in Mukana to be able to link up to that and get started. But it has tight integrations with JavaScript and things like that, so it's a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Are you ready, Bill? We've got
I am ready.
A lot of questions stacked.
So
let's here comes the lightning round that will last for a couple hours.
We're starting with Shane McNamara, Des Moines, Iowa, who says, Andy, any update on when the ZoomOSC instance will be released on Companion? I'm excited for the instance feedback.
Sure thing. So there are 4 steps to releasing something on BitFocus Companion. First, you have to build it. Then you have to do a pull request and get it approved. And then it goes through a review process and appears in the nightly builds. And then when BitFocus releases their next version, it becomes the part of the official download. So right now we're on step 2. We have created the pull request and it is being reviewed by BitFocus's staff. If you want it today, you're able to join our Slack group and join the V4 beta channel, and you can play with the beta version of it. We're still making some changes to it and working with BitFocus. As part of what we're doing here, we're actually working with Companion to make some changes to Companion to make it more friendly for developers like us who want to have external systems influence variables. So we're trying to do a pretty deep help with how Companion is made. And so there's a couple of things that are changing. So you're welcome to download it. It's basically a fork of Companion. So it's a separate application that you'll install for now. And then once it becomes the nightly builds, I'll let everybody know that you can go to BitFocus's website and grab the update there and start to play with it. And then eventually with the next official release, you'll just see Liminal as a vendor and ZoomOSC as a product.
TJ Asher's next from Minneapolis, Minnesota with, is it better to access users in ZoomOSC versus the username or Zoom ID?
This is a fabulous question, TJ. So as you've seen, there's multiple different ways that you can interface with somebody in ZoomOSC by their gallery index, their position in the gallery view, their username, and there's a thing called a target ID. And target ID was the only way in previous versions of ZoomOSC that you could interact with somebody. The idea was you would fill out a text file, list all of their names, and then we would assign a number based on where in that text file the name was located. So at the surface, that seems very clunky and not so helpful. But I'll tell you, it's the only way for me to make the vmix preset that I made last night. And the reason that it works is it allows you to use the text file as a way of repatching without having to touch the application that you are working in. So for example, I don't have to change my activators in vmix every time I go into a new show and wait for the settings panel to render and do all of that stuff and spend minutes and minutes and minutes building out something custom in my controller. All I have to do is reorder the names of the text file, and it will automatically repatch for me. And that's when you use the load command, the save command, and all of that. So it's not necessarily that one is better or worse, it's just that they have different situations where they're helpful. The Zoom ID is really helpful when you need a unique numeric argument for each person, and you don't care if it's persistent or not, and it's auto-generated by Zoom. So if you are working with people who have the same name and you don't want to deal with saving files and loading files and making presets and trying to learn what the numbers are, you can use the Zoom ID. They're very similar, and I see where the question comes from for sure. But the main difference is that the Zoom ID is automatically generated and it's not persistent, but that allows you to have the benefit of working on the fly. And the target list is sort of premeditated. It's expecting a certain username to make the connection in the patch, and it's just for a different type of workflow.
Andreas Molina from Barcelona, Spain is in next. Can you talk about how to manage the participant target list? Which steps do I have to follow to sort the target ID list in the same order that I set up the gallery view? Update, save, include command. I'm on Windows. Thanks.
Great. So the target list and the gallery view, I'd like you to separate them in your mind a little bit. You don't need the target list to reflect the order of the gallery view because we give you the gallery index option as its own way of addressing somebody by their position in the gallery view. So if your only goal is to talk about where is somebody on screen and interact with them by that, just use /zoom/gal index and then put the index where they are. And that's all you have to do. Now, if you do want to work with the target list system, what you do is you have a couple of different ways of generating it. You can jump into a meeting and hit the update button, and that will load everybody in the meeting and assign them, basically tag them with the target ID and put that in memory. You can then save that file to disk with the /save command. And the save command will put it in your documents folder by default, but you can specify where you'd like it to go. Once it's on disk, you can modify it with any text editor, reorder the people, take some people out, put some people in who aren't here yet, that kind of stuff. And then you can load it back in with the load command. And once it's loaded back in, the presets are automatically updated and you're good to go. So that's how I would think about those two things separately.
Next one comes from Alan Scott, New Brunswick, Canada. And he wants, do I need to enter the gallery view before I use the gallery index addresses in my commands?
So on Mac, absolutely. And on Windows, that is the intended behavior. It is possible that you don't need to do that because Windows is not aware of what we're doing in Mac. So it may be the case that you're able to get away with a gallery index command on Windows when you're in speaker view, but that's not the intended workflow, and that'll probably be deprecated once we move forward. It's you need the gallery view on screen for us to be able to do some of the new things that we're doing with the intelligent remapping of where people are. So you need that gallery view rendered.
Steve Ratcliffe of Oakland says, Andy, would it be possible to view Zoom users as individual buttons on a Stream Deck? Think the image as a text overlay by 16 buttons, then use a process where you select a user with the associated button and then select the second button to push them to the pin you'd like them to be pinned to. The idea might be a simple two-step process. Select user and then select pin you'd like the user pinned to.
That's great. I like this idea of having sort of one deck that's to select the command, and then maybe you hold that while you hit the person you want to call it on, and that creates the action. That's where central control is going to play a big role for us, and I think that especially with some of the feedback of the video coming into the keys. Obviously, I really liked Leland's solution, which was super creative, to use an NDI feed coming in to create the buttons overlays. That was real clever. But we're working with central control directly right now for sort of a co-development of our ecosystem and their ecosystem to get it to be able to do something like that out of the box.
Ray Harris is in next from Houston and says, I'm having issues with ZoomOSC either not joining the meeting or crashing. I have no setup window to enter the key, and then when I did get it working, it wouldn't talk to BitFocus Companion. My Stream Deck talks to BitFocus, but neither the hardware or the emulator would trigger anything.
Okay, so this is a good question. I think I'm going to generalize it a little bit and just talk about support for the app in general, because there's a lot of different situations that we might want to take care of. So your best bet, first of all, if you're having a crash or something like that, and you could reach out on Discord, but with crashes in particular, please reach out to info@liminalet.com. And we have a support person there who's going to be able to help you right away with a bunch of things. If you're on Windows, it's possible that you're missing the VCC runtime binaries. These ship with Windows now and have for the past couple of years, but I saw a couple of people who didn't have them, and we can just give you a direct link to go download those and throw that update in there and get the stability back that you're looking for. If you're on Mac OS, there's a couple of things to keep an eye on. There's a bug in Zoom itself with virtual video feeds. And if you have the EOS webcam utility beta, or an old version of Epoch Cam, or a couple other specific virtual cameras, Zoom's SDK is not able to launch, and it will crash immediately when it tries to. We're working with Zoom directly to try to resolve that issue in the SDK. So just send us an email and let us know what operating system you're on, because they are different applications and there's different problems that we'll face on each one, and we'll try to help you as soon as we can.
Great. Brian Stockton of Des Moines, Iowa. My Zoom experience is almost entirely using meetings. I'm finding it difficult to wrap my brain around using ZoomOSC and my Stream Deck within that very dynamic environment. Participants tend to be different from meeting to meeting, and accounts tend to be shared among family members.
Sure thing. And I think just like you saw, there's a level to this where you could use ZoomOSC just for your own self-management if you wanted to, just to be able to have a better self-participation into these meetings like John showed us. But there are other things that you can do as well. And this is where the feedback system, I think, is going to be really helpful to you. Once you see our BitFocus companion preset as well, as soon as ZoomOSC logs into a meeting, all of the names populate on the keys and you're able to start calling actions on them. So this is a great question to investigate this week about now that we're giving you information back about the Zoom call. That's where the dynamic environment really starts to become accessible to you because you're able to repatch on the fly and use the information about the Zoom meeting to make choices in your controller that help you find the through line in the dynamic environment that you're finding yourself in. And please, as you're working through this, continue to post your works in progress. I think the community here is really going to be able to help you based on what we saw today. So I would encourage you to reach out.
Next up is Mark Harder in Brooklyn, who says on the Liminal website, there is a Stream Deck template for version 3.2.1. It doesn't seem to work on ZoomOSC 4.1. Have the commands changed that much?
Direct answer is yes. Long answer is, let me show you how fast it is to update that preset. Here I am in my 3.2.1 preset. I'm going to go over to the spotlight. You can see here that we're missing the user target. So I'm just going to type user ID. Target ID, my own program, can't remember all the details. / I'm going to copy that. Let me just try to grab just the / and the target. And now I'm going to go into every one of these keys and I'm just going to start pasting. And the reason I didn't update this is because I didn't want to cheat on the homework and let you guys just have this out of the box. I wanted you to actually sort of read up on that a little bit. But we'll go ahead and post an updated version of this, but you can do this in about 5 minutes and get this thing up to speed. So that's where you can do that yourself if you need to. Otherwise, I'll get to you this weekend.
Orion Z. Slater in London is up next with, this is probably stupid, but I've looked and looked and I don't see it. How do I log out of my Zoom account in ZoomOSC?
So yeah, it depends on the operating system that you're in. On the Mac, it's in the top carousel. And when you exit, you sort of get this, you get this screen that is like manage my settings, start a new meeting, join a meeting. When you exit out of that panel, it logs you out of the app. And on Windows, it just does that every time you exit out of the application. It doesn't actually remember your login info. So different on both OSs. Check the top carousel, make sure you're closed out of the window that has your account logged into it. And then you should be good to go. If you have any trouble, reach out.
Mark Harder of Brooklyn's next with, after diving headfirst into BitFocus Companion for Stream Deck, I'm seeing that there are limitations, unable to use Stream Deck software at the same time for one, on that pipeline. Then wanting to use the Stream Deck for other commands. I seem to have to use BitFocus and not all program save? Not all program save?
So I know that out of the box, sometimes you have this conflict, but I believe Jeffrey Powers is here. He has these working together. Could you speak to that maybe? There's a way to do it to get both to talk to each other. Or if anybody has an idea on that.
Yeah, you just need to have the companion plugin downloaded in the Stream Deck from the extra actions. Once you have that, you can point it to which page on companion and which button. And then you should be able to use both the Stream Deck buttons and the companion buttons at the same time.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, moving on to Andy Dolph of Durham, New Hampshire. Andy, do you have, how do you do the silhouette avatar clients in Zoom that you used in the videos?
Yeah, so there's two different ways I'm doing it based on how much time I have. One way I'll do it is I will just open up my other devices and throw the silhouette into OBS and then use OBS virtual webcam and have actual unique contributors coming in. If I actually want to be able to like go interact with them on different machines and work with them that way, I kind of brute force it. However, you can, we do support scripting for ZoomOSC. And on Mac, we support multiple instances. And one of the arguments that we give you in ZoomOSC is joining with a specific camera. So you can, there's an ID as a flag that you can set to join with a specific camera device. So if you spin up OBS, not the built-in virtual webcam, but the plugin for OBS that lets you set any number of virtual webcams and map scenes to those virtual webcams. All of them get IDs. You learn those IDs, you enter those in. You can make a script that when you launch it, it brings a bunch of ZoomOSCs into a meeting, each with their own image. And that would be an easy way to spin up something like that. Felipe Nardi, who's one of our power users, is also building up scale testing Zoom as a service model. So he's creating a meeting that's always running with 25 people in it that have ZoomOSC in the background doing things like that. So if you need a kind of a workshop to go in, I know he's considering launching that platform soon, something you might want to look into.
Mark Harder of Brooklyn's up next, and he says, was able to pin via username, unsuccessful at set gallery view or spot. Can you go over those?
Sure. So there, and a note that you have a question about a video. There is a video on this. It's the BitFocus video. There's a part where I talk about setting the gallery view. So there's two things that could be going on here. If you're successful with pin, that means we're not talking about a network issue, so that's great. If you're having trouble with set gallery view, you may have neglected to use your self user ID. So the correct command is /zoom/me/set gallery view. Why is gallery view user action? Well, in ZoomOSC, you can remote control other people's instances and set them between gallery view and speaker view, even if you're not in the webinar using follow host view, if you have ZoomOSC Pro on both sides. So that's why you need a user ID there. Now, the Spotlight command has some rules about when you can use it and when you can't. And just as a general debugging tip, I'd recommend if you can't spotlight somebody in ZoomOSC, try to spotlight them through the user interface and see if you get the option to do it there. Because ZoomOSC will ask Zoom to do things, but Zoom will sometimes say no. And the reason they'll say no is that you may have not followed the rule about having 3 concurrent video users in the meeting to be able to get access to the Spotlight feature. And if it's because of privileges, the program should tell you that you don't have sufficient co-hosting privileges to call the Spotlight. So check up on that. If you're still having trouble, reach out and let us know.
Jan Landy of Las Vegas is up next with, I noticed that Isadora and QLab are paid apps. I only do one meeting a week and I'm the host, and what is the most effective and inexpensive or free application to get the most control and programming?
So BitFocus Companion is a slam dunk on that, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that emulator gives you limitless button options, all the OSC control that you need, and it's totally free. So I'd start there. The only other thing I'd say about Isadora and QLab is that, if you have there is sort of if you were to purchase or rent Isadora or QLab for a limited period of time just to be able to build your controller that you're looking for, at least in Isadora, you can open saved files with the free version. You just can't save new ones. So if you wanted to spend, I think it's less than $35 a month right now. And there was some sale for students that was I remember at one point it was $5 a month or something like that. And you can just build it over the course of these 30 days that we're working together. And we'd be able to then have something that you could open with the free version after you deauthorize it down the line. But BitFocus Companion is by far the easiest one. Just doesn't have that input side. But once we have our plugin for it, then it'll be really just incredible.
Next is Sherman Patton, and I think it's about what you just talked about. The API note, Zoom Clear Pin didn't work for me. I found I had to run Zoom Me Clear Pin. Sounds like exactly what you just addressed.
I will address that though, Bill, because there's this thing about okay, why is something a user action or why is something a global action? Why would Clear Pin be a user action but Clear Spot be a global action? And it's, if you were in the beta group, you could actually watch my brain unravel itself trying to explain this to somebody this week. And I second guessed myself a lot and thought maybe I was doing the wrong thing. But no, I actually am. I stand by the way that it works. And the reason that it works the way it works is that there may be a reason that you would want to forward a clear pin command to another user to clear the pins that you are remote controlling on their screen. And that would mean it needs to be a user action. There is no reason you would need to forward a clear spotlight command because it's global for the entire meeting anyway. So clearing some spotlights on somebody else's behalf doesn't get you anything beyond just calling the clear spotlight because it's global for the meeting. So that's why clear pin is a user action and clear spot is a global action.
Nice. Okay. TJ Asher comes back with, if I have multiple instances of ZoomOSC running and both are on the same receiving port 9090, do I both get the OSC command from Companion, or does one get it and eat one command?
That is a fabulous question. It has to do with broadcast addresses. And I don't know how Companion handles broadcast addresses. What I would tell you is that the simple way to do that is just to have unique ports in each ZoomOSC and address them separately with 2 instances of the OSC integration. That's normally how I roll with it. But in theory, if you put a broadcast address as the IP address, it shouldn't eat it. It should just broadcast it out there, and then all the ZoomOSCs that see it will hit it. But that would be a good question for somebody who's a little more advanced on Companion to tell you how that exactly will pan out.
Jonathan Erb of Dunedin says, how do I have multiple instances of ZoomOSC on my Mac for testing purposes?
Sure thing. So if you're just looking for a couple multiple instances, just launch the app a couple of times itself and then log in and set it up that way. If you need large quantities of people, we support scripting. Now, the arguments for scripting we don't make public for security reasons, but you are more than welcome to reach out to us at info@liminalet.com and we'll give you the command structure that you need to get that set up. Also, within office hours and in our power users Slack group, there are scripts that have been written both by our employees and by power users and by Benjamin. So you are welcome to pick those up as well and get started. And that'll let you spin up an arbitrary number of Zoom participants into a meeting.
Jeff Weissman in Oakland says, using TouchOSC, I'm getting error 4 trying to pin. What is error 4 and how do I resolve it?
Error 4 has to do with incorrect circumstances. And this comes right from Zoom's API. So this means that there is that you would likely be unable to call that pin command just by clicking through the user interface. And so one reason that could be is if you're running on macOS in multi-monitor mode and you have less than 3 video participants, there's this very strange situation where you can't pin somebody to the second display. Now on Windows, if I have just even myself in my own Zoom call, I can pin myself to both displays just fine. But on Mac, they decided to use the spotlighting rules to affect the second pin screen rules. And so you might get error 4 on macOS, but not on Windows when you try to do that. Again, the debugging step, try to do it through the user interface. If Zoom's not letting you do it through the UI, we're not going to be able to let you do it. So just keep an eye on that.
Michael E. Graybeb of Larchmont, New York says, using Stream Deck with Companion, how do I set up in advance of a Zoom webinar multi-spotlight shots that feature 2, 3, or 4 of the panelists before they join?
Target IDs. This is the exact use case for target IDs, or if you happen to know the usernames that they're going to have in the Zoom call, you could patch those in as well. But this is why target IDs exist, because it allows you to very quickly just build all your programming thinking about numbers and about like the idea of a person, and then you get the specificity by doing the update and then patching the text file really quickly at the beginning, and then you're good to go. That'll let you remap your entire controller instantly.
Alan Scott of New Brunswick, Canada says, what does exception while scanning gallery windows mean?
That I believe that's a macOS specific debug, and that has to do with something in the Zoom rendering element. It's a very low level issue, and if you're able to reproduce that, please email that in as a support ticket so that we can let our team know that you're having that issue, and we'll try to fix that up for you. I will say that next week we're having a huge update on the Mac in terms of just a lot of these deeper integrations with Zoom's backend that should smooth over a lot of that kind of stuff.
Jan Landy in Las Vegas is back with, if I'm only a panelist, it's not my meeting, is there a benefit to logging in with Zoom, with OSC rather than Zoom itself?
I think there is an extent for the kind of things that like John was doing where you had that layout of controls. I will say that if you are, if you're just, and that's good for like personal use, I would say that if you, in a production environment, I like to have the redundancy of the vanilla Zoom client present. So I tend to, like right now, I'm contributing through vanilla Zoom. ZoomOSC is also running, but my main contribution is this. So I can sort of, for no technical reason other than just sort of the mental benefit of thinking about my personal contribution coming through one platform and my remote control coming through another platform. But for self-management, it's quite helpful.
Mark Hadley of Seattle, how do you load what I've done in Companion to Stream Deck hardware? Not that I don't just love working only in Companion. I have tried making sure the Stream Deck software isn't running and rebooting.
I think this might, well, if you're trying to run it on the Stream Deck hardware, there's the idea inside of Companion that you can actually select your physical Stream Deck device and it will flash what's in the web emulator onto that device. That's actually the sort of the main workflow in Companion, is that you have that physical Stream Deck. The emulator is there if you don't have it, but you should absolutely be able to flash your Stream Deck with Companion. That's sort of the reason it was built.
Great. Philip Kaiser of Orlando, Florida says, what's the current status of the Zoom watermark in ZoomOSC and the best ways to mitigate its presence?
If you guys keep asking me this, I'm going to get in trouble. It's gone. It's gone.
That was fast. Okay, Steve Ratliff for Oakland is back with, I'm having trouble getting into scheduled Zoom calls with ZoomOSC version 4. I can start an ad hoc meeting and use all the OSC controls, but when I enter a meeting number and click join, nothing happens. Has anyone else experienced this? Any solutions? And he's on a 2018 MacBook Pro with Catalina.
thank you for sharing that information. That helps me understand what you might be running into here. So we've talked about one of the main questions that have come up over the course of the week is why can't ZoomOSC join this meeting or that meeting? And the reason is usually because of pre-registration, where you need to have an account logged into in order to join said meeting. And if that account is not a single sign-on account, you can log into ZoomOSC and then you should be able to log into the meeting. For example, when I do office hours and I bring ZoomOSC onto the panel, I've pre-registered with the office hours link a dummy account, and then I can just log into the app and then I can log into office hours. But if I try the only join tab, it rejects me. It boots me out because I'm not registered. I don't have the ability to register without an account. Now, David Brady was super helpful this week in talking about how this interacts with the webinar system. I'll just go down this tangent real quick because I think it's relevant. If you have an SSO account and you want to log into a webinar, what you can do is you can use only join and then use the subsequent prompt to enter your email address to validate that you're able to come into that webinar. And so that's a really cool loophole that you can use just the subsequent marching of prompts in order to get through that and not have to do single sign-on directly through the ZoomOSC app itself. So that's a helpful thing to look into.
Terry Donor of Richmond Hill, Ontario says, for the ZoomOSC homework presentation, how are we going to do the demos? Well, we pretty much passed that here. We just showed everybody how to do them. So we'll move on to Christopher Tuason of Santa Ana, California, trying to understand how to target a group of users. Is the target list the same as the participant.txt file, or is this another list that I can generate in real time that specifically groups certain people together?
So right now it is that text file. I would say that one of the things that we're looking to add in a subsequent update is the ability to have multiple files that you can leverage simultaneously to move between and automatically remap between presets. I think that's a sort of perhaps a niche workflow, but it is a very powerful one when you get it up and running. So we'll be looking at building something like that out. But yes, what we used to be called performance_config.txt is now participant list and that target_list.txt, and that file is where the target list is managed.
Andy Dolphin, Durham, New Hampshire says, so using ZoomOSC in a webinar, if I do Zoom/panelist/video off, they can't turn their video back on. Is there any way to set it up so that I can turn all of their video off, but then they are able to turn it back on when they want to?
So I looked into this, and so did a couple other folks in the Discord, and unfortunately, the same behavior happens in Zoom itself. So if you do this through the vanilla Zoom client, it's a bug where the setting that allows them to turn their own AV devices back on does not apply. So try to set that setting when you create the meeting itself, if it gives you that option in the webinar. I'm not exactly familiar with all of the options in the web interface, but if that is an option there, try to set it at the meeting creation time, and then sanity check yourself using vanilla Zoom, because I think this is a Zoom issue and not a ZoomOSC issue.
Jonathan Erb of Dunedin says, I don't have multiple machines to test, but I do remote controlling on multiple computers. Must the slave computers have ZoomOSC 4, or can they be essentials? If the slave computers must have Pro installed and active, must each machine need a different Pro license key?
For things like remote controlling the selection and volumes and levels of audiovisual devices, you'll need Pro on both ends, and you're more than welcome to use your office hours key as many times as you need to be able to set up a demo like that.
Nice. John Pruitt of Huntersville on the panel. I made a new button to raise and lower my hand during using Companion, but Zoom/me/toggle hand didn't work. Any idea as to why? And he has another link there.
I had a meeting with some developers in the SDK, and we grilled them on this toggle hand feature. Toggle hand only works one direction, and I don't understand why. So this is a known bug in the Zoom SDK where on Mac OS, in certain conditions, you can raise a hand but not lower it, or lower a hand but not raise it, and you can get yourself into a corner. So we're working on it. We are aware of it. We have asked for an immediate SDK upgrade to solve some silly things like that. So we're on it. Sorry about that. Put a little heart on our developer forum posts and help us get through.
Okay, Adrian Christie of Bucharest, Romania says, is there an app that can simulate a lot of participants in a ZoomOSC conversation?
So like I just said, the ZoomOSC app can be that thing that simulates the participants. If you're on Mac OS and you contact us for the scripting support, or reach out in one of our different channels, or you can test out things like Felipe's interface that's going to have all of those virtual participants, or you can believe there is a web utility or a web browser that can spin up a bunch of participants. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but I've seen it before. It's just it's got a 30-day free trial, and you can spin up multiple virtual instances of most teleconferencing applications and test it out that way.
Stephen M. of Madison, any way to get the ZoomOSC to stop sending auto greet messages? When I joined just now, my system just started greeting everybody.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hello messages and greeting messages in the chat, and that is controlled by the remote control group. So under your settings page, both on Mac OS and on Windows, there is a setting for remote control group and allow remote control from. Set those to disabled unless you are actively trying to use this system. You probably have it set to all right now, and that is why it is saying hello to everybody, because it's assuming that that's what you want it to do. So you just have to set those to disabled or none, and then it won't try to pair with everybody in the call.
James McNamara of Westfield, Massachusetts. Is there a video to use vMix posted?
Yeah, as of 2 a.m. There's a little demo that I shot last night, and I'm going to make it into a full video this week because it is probably one of the most exciting things I've done with it because of what it actually entails. I mean, this is basically going to allow you to have, if you think of each screen coming into vMix as a PTZ camera, and then each possible layout of people as a preset for that PTZ camera, and you follow that guide, you will be able to cut a show together totally in vMix without even thinking about ZoomOSC in the background. It'll just sit there when you preview the input, it'll pin the person and put it on the preview monitor, and you can take it. So just so long as you do this, have the same sort of cautions that you have with PTZ cameras, where you don't do a live take of a moving shot, that kind of thing, when it's doing PTZ preset recalls, as long as you're thinking about it like that, you'll be able to do some really, really advanced show cutting right inside of vMix itself.
Nice. Paul Prusakowski of Gainesville, Florida. Please explain how the show /user, how the /show usernames and /hide usernames work differently with /me or /all.
This is true for all user actions. When you specify them with me, it's affecting your instance. When you specify them with a user or a user group or a macro or something like that, it is going to attempt to use the ZoomOSC Pro remote control system. So that will basically forward the message via the chat to the other ZoomOSC Pro. It'll see that chat message and it will try to turn hide or show usernames on or off. There's, that this is part of, it's the same as like setting mic levels and things like that. It seems a little counterintuitive because there's no way in Zoom to be able to set somebody else's view of that. But in ZoomOSC Pro, there is, if they remote control each other through the chat system.
By the way, I just realized since I'm reading these, I didn't say / instead of /. There are people on the radio version of this, basically, so I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. Orion Z. Slater in London says, are the commands, let's see, parenthesis, open paren, set gallery view, comma, set speaker view, close paren, not global rather than user, or can they be used to force other participants' viewing options?
Yep. So we've just sort of talked about that. The only other note I'll say is that if you don't want to use the ZoomOSC remote control system, like for example, you're in a webinar and you want everybody, or in some meetings now, and you want to follow the host view, that is a setting inside of Zoom, and we don't preclude you from using that. So you can use, if you set, /Zoom/me/ set gallery view, and everybody is in speaker view, and you have follow view on, it'll pump everybody back to gallery view in the webinar. So that is how that system can be used without having to do the remote control. So just
cool.
Mix and match the settings.
You're using /, so will I.
Yeah, all OSC messages are /.
Oh, they're /. I was wrong. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Orion Z from London, I think I'm right in saying that there's no global commands for changing screen share and chat settings. Users can chat with anybody /only host /no one. Who can screen share? Only host /anyone. I'm guessing it's not in the SDK. Could we all submit a request for these?
So we're talking about, it's a user action because we can remote control it. That's the idea, is that like I can share my presenter's screen for them if they have ZoomOSC Pro 4 running, and I send a message /Zoom /username /share screen, Bill display 1, and then that will start a screen share for them on that display. So we do forward it. We're working through a back channel there, and so it's not in the SDK, but we added it basically using the chat communication as a back channel. But the chat settings the same way. I mean, in fact, one of the most niche and I hope to see it used in the field someday. It'll be really rare, and I don't know if anybody will use this, but the remote chat function is a blast because it lets you send a chat message on somebody else's behalf. So I can imagine some puzzle or escape room that is just mind-boggling because you're sending chat messages to people and you don't even know it. So that could be quite a bit of fun. Of course, that setting can be disabled too, by the way. So, but that could be a lot of fun for sort of a game.
Michael Fraley, Dallas Fort Worth. Why doesn't ZoomOSC save meetings previously attended in the join menu?
It has to do with security and your account management. We don't store anything associated with the Zoom account. At least in the Windows version. In the Mac version, it sometimes can share information with the main Zoom client, but it's a security thing.
Steve Ratliff in Oakland says in Mac OSC. In Mac OS, is it possible to default a Zoom link click to push to ZoomOSC?
Yes, there is deep link support in Mac OS. However, Chrome does not allow you to select the application that you deep link to. So if you're using Firefox, for example, you can specify that when I click a Zoom link, I want it to launch into ZoomOSC versus the Zoom client. And so you can do that there. On Windows, that function is still pending. And then if you're still having trouble with, you must use URLs, but you want to just you don't want to part out that. See the how to join a Zoom meeting video in that, where I show you the layout of a URL and where to find the ID and where to find the password, because we can take the encrypted form of the password and pass that in, and we will decrypt that for you. So you can just enter in, basically piecemeal the URL, and I'll get around to adding direct URL parsing. It's just low on my chain.
Orion Z. Slater in London Beck with, will there be an option to open links in ZoomOSC by default?
Yeah, that's deep linking. That's what we just discussed.
Patrick Shonis of Little Rock, Arkansas. You mentioned the watermark is gone, but what about the other junk on screen, like names and full screen button on the second display? I have names turned off, but they're persistent on the second display.
Yeah, they do persist on the second display, and that's just sort of a Zoom thing. But thankfully, the way that it appears on the second display is just when you go full screen view. That's the key. Is if I go full screen on my second display, it is literally like the smallest possible strip at the bottom. It's not the big block that you get in the other view that's in the way there. So it's not a perfectly clean feed. This has to do with part of how Zoom delivers that format. But it is this view is probably needs like a 1 or 2% punch to be able to get rid of that thing at the bottom, and it's not that bad.
Great. Jeff Westman of Oakland says, where do you get the scripts for a Mac to spin up multiple OSCs on a call?
Yeah, you have to either contact us or you have to reach out in Slack or in Discord to get the information about how to do that. And again, that's for security reasons.
Jason Bache in Albuquerque, are there major limitations to using Companion on the Raspberry Pi? It's my favorite way to disintermediate Companion from a specific machine. Any showstoppers?
Not as far as ZoomOSC is concerned. I don't really think that there's a specific disadvantage if you already have it set up. I mean, I guess the only disadvantage would be it takes a little more elbow grease to get it going. But if you already have it, we're not going to be able to. We're not going to stop you. I mean, there's nothing about ZoomOSC. Just check your firewall settings, I guess, is the other thing. It's like, you might have more restrictive firewall settings that would prevent you from getting OSC networking going. For Windows firewalls blocking the ZoomOSC app, then you might hit a wall there. But if your network's set up well and you already have that running, that's a great workflow.
Jason's right back with the next highest rated question. Any word on fixing the Mac Mini M1 pink video issue?
It's done. It is done. Update your Mac OS and then download the latest release version of ZoomOSC.
Jan Landy in Las Vegas. When using Companion, it gave me a choice to hide. How do I unhide?
I don't know what that means. Any idea? Is this
self view maybe?
Yeah, self view. I'm not sure. For every hide that we give you an unhide command. So I guess my best advice is to check the API.
Okay. Jan has another question in here. What's the order that I need to load apps to use OSC?
It shouldn't matter. It's just networking. So you can boot up your controller first, or you can boot up your Zoom first. The only time it will matter is on the output system if you're doing something that's dependent, like if your controller has a boot up sequence that it needs to listen to ZoomOSC for some stuff. But none of the things that are just sending information are going to rely on that.
Michael E. Graham of Larchmont, New York says, is there a way to connect New Blues Titler Live with ZoomOSC and Stream Deck/Companion to bring lower thirds into a Zoom meeting or webinar using that app?
I got to look at that. I am not familiar with that integration. Is anybody familiar with that titler? I haven't used that before.
New Blue should
Oh,
have
good.
NDI
Yeah, Chuck.
integration.
Chuck, go ahead, Chuck. Chuck is pulling on his mic. We've unmuted him. Oh, you might be double unmuted.
I am double muted
Okay,
because
there you
I kicked my power out a few seconds ago.
Uh-huh.
So I know that New Blue Tidler, there should be an option to have NDI out. So if that's the case, you should be able to bring that NDI in. I've also done it with full screen and then using Keen. So any vmix or something like that.
I read that question. I read that question possibly as, well, maybe not. Into Zoom meeting.
Like, can you pull the OSC of the username into the titler and title it in the app?
I think that's the
just
question.
Don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
That would be awesome.
Does it have a dynamic? Does New Blue have? Does the titler have a dynamic interface that it can grab data from an HTML or?
It does.
Yeah, so if it does that, there's probably a way to
write a file. You know, you could use a Zadora or something to write a file and override that file with the username if it pulls fast enough. So
yeah, because a lot of the titler programs are built to have some kind of dynamic connection, you know, to them, whether it's New Blue or Softron or On Air. You know, all of those have some way to look at an external data input. It's kind of a key part of a titling software. So it's just a matter of figuring out what file needs to be generated to create that.
So, Michael, you've just given yourself your homework assignment for the week.
There you go.
Figure it out. Tell us how it goes.
Yeah, let us know.
All right, next question. Our friend Tucker DeGoo says, is there any manufacturer you would like, Andy, for us to go to make a feature request in order to help move integrations along?
Yes, I will absolutely unionize office hours on this. I'm going to go put a forum post on the vmix forums asking them to add native OSC support to the activator system. And then I'm going to have you mob that.
Put it in Discord.
Absolutely do that. I will make full use of the Discord.
Time for the office
I think we'll have to
brigade.
rename it the Office Hours Army.
What was it? Star Wars? It was
Focus.
the Techno Union? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Jan Landy of Las Vegas is back with once I program my queues in OSC, how do I save that and how do I set it up in advance, the pinability, without anyone but myself in the room prior to my guest arriving?
It depends on what you're building it in. In theory, the controller is what you're saving. It's not ZoomOSC. The only thing that you save and load in ZoomOSC is the target list. So save and load your target list, manage your target list, and then if it's Isadora, save the Isadora file and call it back up. If it's Bitfocus, recall the presets for that. If it's QLab, open the QLab file. It's really the controller does the heavy lifting on the memory and all of this, and just use the save and load commands if you're using target lists to get ZoomOSC up and running.
Ryan Slater in London again. Could you talk about setting up the output commands and how these can be used for automation?
Yeah, let's take a quick perusal of the output options inside of ZoomOSC. So I'll go over to our syntax document. I'm going to scroll past all of this stuff, which is what you guys are working on this week. These are the user actions. These are the global actions. And then the pink stuff is the outputs. So you can see here, I can give you stuff about muting and unmuting, spotlight changing, when a person's online, hand raising lower, and then the most important command in all of ZoomOSC right here, the list output. This list output is the key to building integrations and other applications. This gives you full frames of data about every user that you're subscribed to, so that if you want to build something that knows everything about the Zoom meeting and everything about the people in the Zoom meeting that you're tracking, it's this list command right here. So this is how we do the Bitfocus integration. This is how we're going to do integrations with Isadora in a more advanced way. This here is the key to the kingdom, the list command. So definitely read about it and play around with it and see what you can make.
Nice. Jonas Stattel of Reutlingen says, can ZoomOSC send custom commands to another program? For example, send a play command when I type play in the chat.
Yes. So it's still beta on macOS, but on Windows, if you type in $$$$$ IP address :port / all of your ZoomOSC stuff, or all of your custom OSC command, when a ZoomOSC that has the remote control option security level set to the proper setting, it will actually emit that as a genuine OSC packet on the network and allow you to do, QLab Go or something like that, whatever your external application is looking for. No intermediate programming required. It'll just it'll construct the OSC message and send it to the IP and the port that you want it to go to if your security settings are set properly. As you can see, there's been a lot of chat messages trying to remote control people and do things like that, but all of us have those settings disabled, so they're falling on flat ears. So we nip it there. and the same thing with the custom OSC. But absolutely, that was a really fun feature, and I'm excited to see what you make with that.
Andrew Lipnick in San Francisco says, can you create an invite link that launches ZoomOSC instead of vanilla Zoom?
So we don't have yet vanity deep links that would be like ZoomOSC.us. And then it would launch ZoomOSC instead of Zoom. And we'll look at that. But it's deep linking is just something that is like in my list of priorities is going to be SSO and then deep linking and that kind of stuff. Just because it's about who's going to try to who needs the most help there, and I think we need SSO first before we can really dive into the deep link stuff.
Terry Donor, Richmond Hill, Ontario. Are you going to be adding new ZoomOSC messages to propagate Zoom errors? For example, error 4.
Yeah. So in a failure state, we have looked at an error command before. I think it may be in the Mac version, but it's just sort of hiding there as a sort of a hidden thing. Yeah, we're going to look at that. It's a little bit tricky because Zoom gives us information that through the SDK that is not accurate. So the question is, how do we interpret something that we are throwing you because we don't understand it in the first place? It's like something where it's like, I might be able to give you the error codes. I think at least giving you an error state, that this command did not work programmatically. I think that'll be a big help. But in terms of giving you the specific code, I don't know how helpful the code is going to be because it doesn't really help me. So we'll try it. We'll try to build something out for that. And that'll be sort of that won't be in like one of the next huge updates. That'll be in a point update that comes, over the next couple of weeks.
Greg Gibson out of Washington, D.C. says, what's the fastest way to find and manipulate a presenter who may join a meeting in progress and only be in for a short time? I deal with a lot of members of Congress, and they often join meetings late. Is there no way to know in advance, and there is no way to know in advance specifically how they'll enter their name?
Right. So this is the output system. So this is what we're learning about this week. This is where ZoomOSC's ability to report who's in the meeting can be used to pre-populate your controller once you join the call instantly. So when that member jumps in and you get the online message and 4 things about where in the gallery view they are, what their username is, what their Zoom ID is, and what their target ID is, build that in, or call the list command and build that in to your controller to have it update, that this member has arrived and here's what their name is and something like that. It's designed to help you not have to premeditate as much.
There you go. Stephen Jones of Columbus, Ohio. I work for a university that uses SSO. What's the best to add ZoomOSC for control?
So the limit with SSO can be sort of worked around by creating a free Zoom account and then creating your meeting through your SSO domain and just allowing via direct invitation the non-SSO account to come in, sign into the app, join the meeting.
Johnny Estias of Manila. Is there a way to use ZoomOSC with Isadora and a GLSL shader to get ISOs of meeting participants? Check
our GitHub. Yeah, we have a open source GLSL shader for exactly that purpose. And then there's been some forks of it that I don't know if Joe Shea is here or if Joe Shea is in earshot, but I am a big fan of Joe Shea, who has done a lot of stuff with that kind of stuff. And Bernie Bernstein also has sort of a version of our shader that is in JavaScript and TypeScript and all. I mean, people have just taken that code and gone to the moon. So there's all sorts of really cool projects out there with shader language.
Andy Dolph of Durham, New Hampshire. If we download your beta build of Companion, can that live on the same machine as the released Companion? For example, he wants to play with the beta but use the release when he does shows, obviously not at the same time.
It's not going to be as clean. Unfortunately, they share the profiles page, so it's going to mess around with your saves. So you could back up your saves and you could do this, but honestly, I'd try to spin it up on a different box or just request a demo from somebody who has it, or stand by. It'll be coming soon.
Greg Gibson of Washington, D.C. is back with, am I correct that in order to use the remote commands, you have to run ZoomOSC Pro on the remote machines? So if I want to pin a screen on a remote machine, I need to run ZoomOSC Pro on that machine. How will licensing be managed for this type of situation?
Yep. So it'll be the same licensing system. You've got it correct that if you want a remote pin on somebody's behalf, you will need ZoomOSC Pro on both sides of the equation in order to manage that communication. The only other note I'm going to give you on licensing right now is that we are going to launch an annual license starting next week, and that'll give you 2 months free when you do that.
MJ Maltby in Denver says, does ZoomOSC have the ability to pull questions from Zoom webinars?
Oh, we don't have questions. That's a good one. We have the chat though. We don't have questions though. We'll have to look at that.
Alfredo in London says, joining a client's Zoom meeting with ZoomOSC on a Mac was very slow. Also, anytime the host was sending me to a breakout room, it was taking far too long to join the breakout and to come back to the main room. Is this normal? If I join a meeting, a create, then is it really fast? I guess that's meaning
So they're saying if they spin it up themselves, it works fine. But if they're jumping between breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's stuff with the Zoom SDK. And the best way that you can help us resolve that issue is to, when I post on the forums about, hey, this is taking really long. Why is it that I have to be in a program loop for 15 seconds to try to get in to a breakout room or something like that on this type of operating system? These are kind of things that we don't control. We ask Zoom to do things, but Zoom does what it will with what we ask it to do. So the best way to support us is to go like those things, upvote them, bomb the requests. We'll coordinate that through office hours.
Often panelist Leland Best in Michigan says, how long before a gallery position target command will be available for Windows users?
Oh, this is a tough one. This is a very, very difficult one to crack because of how Zoom's UI is written in Windows versus how it's written in Mac OS. So I'm going to need some. I'm going to have to spend a bunch of money and hire some people to get that going, and that's just going to take me some time. And I'm going to need to probably work with Zoom pretty closely on that to get it working. Or Zoom could do what I asked them to do and just report the order of the gallery view in the SDK. It's one of those things where I'm going to have to build a computer vision algorithm to track the gallery view to do it in Windows, and it's going to be a real pain.
I won't say it. Chuck Wojak of Concord, California says, so can we join with ID and password on an OSC accounts for this meeting as well? My registered account is unfortunately SSO.
Yeah, you can. For office hours, it doesn't require that it's SSO registration. It just needs some account. So you can just spin up a free account and then sign up with that.
Talak Lopez Waterman, Florida. If I call for a list of, let's say, microphones, I seem to only get one of them in Isadora. Is there a problem with the length of message in Isadora?
Yeah, so there are problems in Isadora's. Isadora has exits the specification of OSC on a couple of occasions, and there's silly things like the idea that they associate the OSC address channels with the payloads. That means that if you have an arbitrary number of arguments, you don't know where the next safe place to put your next address is when you're thinking about how it comes together. So this is one of my problems with Isadora's OSC processing, and I'm working with Isadora directly to try to figure out a way to get around this, or for them to change the app, because it doesn't meet the specification when it does that. The other thing is that Isadora updates. There's a setting in Isadora that controls how fast the logic updates with respect to the FPS of the scene. So if you set that, I think by default it's 8 times the frame rate. That is too slow for the amount of data that we're providing. So what you need to most likely do is go into the setting in ZoomOSC that delays the output, set that to 100 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds, and then call the command again. And that might make it more palatable for Isadora to be able to parse. We literally added that feature specifically because of Isadora having a problem with this.
Jonathan Erb of Dunedin says, and is looking for Tucker Durgu. What was the name of that OSC troubleshooter you had to monitor your companion buttons? Is Tucker still here?
I believe it's Protocol.
Yeah, Protocol with a K.
Okay, then Mark Harder's next in Brooklyn. Tucker, what was... Oh, that's the one. Excuse me, I didn't do that. Andy Dolph, Durham, New Hampshire. Where in ZoomOSC, where do you set the force participants in a meeting to follow the host's view?
So you do... Don't ask me why Zoom decided it had to work like this. You arrange the box, then you go to the View tab, and then you can set it. If you don't do it in that specific order, you will not see the button there. You have to do one rearrangement of the gallery view, and then you can see the option to force people to follow that view. You don't see the option under any other circumstance. It's very peculiar.
Jason Panks in Nashville says, any integration with ZoomOSC with Mimo Live app? I'm asking as I hear the discussion of integration with vMix.
Olive Branch is extended. Reach out if we want to collaborate on building something. I will happily help with that.
Let's all email Oliver.
Yeah, there you go. You guys both need to stop by the same day. Mark Harder in Brooklyn says, is it possible to demo show us how to remap the controller based on user target list that ZoomOSC spits out, and show how to spit out that list?
Yeah, so I'll go over target lists again in this week's set of videos. I probably won't take the time for it now, but the idea with the target list is that you're basically just editing a text file. Like I'll do a quick little share here. Here is my documents folder, and here is my target list file for this meeting that I got at the start of the meeting. I called update and save, and here's all of your usernames. And so if I had a text editor that showed me line numbers, I would know whose number was what on this, but I could also see those numbers inside of the ZoomOSC console. So that is editing that text file is how you remap the target list, and you call load and save and include and update those memory management functions to manage it.
Mitch Jacobson in New York City says, would it be possible to kick out the usernames list into a spreadsheet that has new tech data link formatting for titling in TriCasters?
Ooh, clever. Yes, it'll probably need a bit of a custom development just to read our text output or OSC output and convert it into their format, but that should not be bad at all. It should be just a very, very small program that we need to do that.
James in Orlando says, does screen share tick the enable sound when the screen sharing, or is it a separate command, or is a separate command needed?
Oh yeah, no, we haven't done the advanced screen sharing stuff yet, and part of the reason was I knew Zoom was changing it, and so I didn't want to go through all the time setting up a bunch of things in the screen share interface just for them to change it again. So now that they have made the change, once they make that available to the SDK, we'll go through and we'll add advanced sharing, playback sharing, whatever they give us in the SDK, we'll go build out, and that'll be part of probably like the 4.1 or the 4.2 update. We'll expose all that stuff out once it gets to us.
Terry Donor in Richmond Hill, Ontario says, I can't find the doc for the command line setting. Where might I find that?
Okay, so this is going to be on liminalet.com/ZoomOSC-downloads, or you just can go through our interface and you'll see that you can get to the support documents. It's also now included in the download of ZoomOSC from our website. So if you go grab ZoomOSC in there's a couple of PDFs. There's our EULA, the quick start guide, and the user manual and the API. So there's a ton of documentation out there, and it's all through the website.
Craig K. in Toronto, using either Companion or QLab, I was unable to get start screen share working. I followed the video, but neither would start a share of a specific screen or primary. The stop share did work, and he's on Mac OS.
Yeah, so on Mac OS, that's going to be one of the fixes for next week. There's a problem with the security system, and we were able to solve that. So check back in after the 4.0.2 update, and we should have that taken care of.
Marty Adius of Silver Screen, Maryland says, if we are building applications for clients using the Pro version, which version of ZoomOSC will the client need?
Okay, so this is, I'm going to generalize the question a little bit and just talk about integrations in general. So there are the way that things work for consumers, and there are the way things work for our enterprise partners. So we launched an enterprise option for ZoomOSC, and specifically designed to target this use case where you have an integration and you are basically repackaging ZoomOSC for another use case. This is like the case in point, the Maestro platform, where you get the Stream Deck in the mail, and that's all you get, and everything else is handled in the back end for you. You don't even think about ZoomOSC or any of its other, Stream Deck or any of that stuff going on. The idea behind these enterprise options is that we can offer engineering as a service. If you're building a pipeline, you want to basically say, hey, I have this video production workflow, go throw ZoomOSC into it, and we can come in and we can, through either consultations or through direct hands-on engineering, we can build that out. And then if you have sort of embedded use cases for ZoomOSC, we can talk about customized pricing, customized deployment plans, volume, all of that stuff. And the best way to do that is just to reach out and say that you're interested in talking about enterprise.
Ward Cameron's next in Banff, Alberta, Canada. Why is there no minimize button on the ZoomOSC join schedule meeting screen in Windows 10?
Because Zoom didn't make one. That's probably my most honest option. It's just not that all of that stuff is Zoom's UI that comes right from them, and the most I can do is I can edit the text in the buttons sometimes, but they just didn't. I don't know. Ask them.
Leland Best of Corona, Michigan's has ZoomOSC been tested with OSC Pilot? I've run into a problem entering payloads into the address on the software because it doesn't allow spaces as input. Anything he's missing?
Yeah, I'll reach out to the developers. It's on our. We were actually talking about this last night, and so I'm so happy that you're doing something with it, so I can have a specific use case to explain that. So we can. We'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll figure something out.
Sounds great, Andy. I know we addressed that earlier. That question just never got removed after.
All good. All good.
Jonathan Urban, Dunedin, Florida. Thank you for the pronunciation correction. How do I access the target list on a Mac?
It's in the settings pane. You can choose the default saving location, and then you can choose the location to load it from.
Jay Herzog of Baltimore. Will I not be able to use ZoomOSC with my students for a virtual play if I'm connected through SSO? Did you just answer that?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter what the meeting requirement is, just as long as you open up the back door to be able to let non-SSO clients into the meeting.
John Pruitt of Huntersville. Could you please sign your installers?
Yeah, so we are signed and validated on Mac, and then on Windows, we are also signed. If you look under the properties pane and look at certificates, you'll see Liminal Entertainment Technologies is shipping the certificate. We're waiting for Microsoft to automatically accept that invitation, and we're just so new of an application in this version that they haven't gotten around to it yet. But it is signed, and if you need additional for your IT department or something like that, you need additional security validations, you can check the certificate there, or you can contact us and we'll give you other validation information. But it's there. We're just waiting for Microsoft to do their part.
Great. Ashia Dev of New York City. Any plans to open up ZoomOSC with a plugin system so others can develop and share tools?
Yeah, so ZoomOSC is a plugin. That's my simple answer, is that it is the plugin for Zoom to do this. But no, but to not be facetious, the actual answer to that is yes. We have interest in partner programs for helping people understand how to use ZoomOSC with their third-party applications to help build out that relationship. We're directly contacting every OSC application that we are aware of, and we're trying to build that relationship up. And so if you see something and you're like, yeah, I want that to work better with ZoomOSC, either contact them and CC me or something like that, and we want to do it. The olive branch is extended to all of those manufacturers, and we will help you implement the API. We'll share code. We'll do whatever we need to do to get your application working with us.
Talak Lopez Waterman in New York. In lists, what separates out items? Quotes, spaces, commas?
Okay, so this is like the OSC specification. It's typically represented as just a white space between arguments and payloads. This is like the kind of thing where like everybody kind of made their own choices when they implemented OSC about how they wanted the user to construct the OSC message. Because remember, it's UDP at the end of the day, so it's not a space, it's not anything. It's just data. And the way it's represented in the application is on an app by app basis. Typically the syntax is all of your addresses slashed eliminated and all of your arguments are spaced eliminated. And if you have a multi-word string argument, you wrap it in quotes.
Okay, and we've made it to the last one. At least it's existing now. Jason Panks of Nashville says, crazy question, can ZoomOSC be used with other collaboration apps? And he's thinking specifically Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, and so forth.
Well, it depends if Zoom is being used with those deployments as well. I mean, I think that it's not, I mean, no need to state the obvious, right? It doesn't like remote control Teams or something like that. But if your pipeline involves multiple applications using Zoom as a partial contribution system, and you need, to use ZoomOSC as a way of getting data outside of the ecosystem or something like that into other platforms, and you have things that can manage that in the in-between. Yeah, I mean, I think ZoomOSC is just a sort of a helpful tool for teleconferencing that you can use to build out some really crazy stuff. So I don't think the question's crazy at all. I think that you can, if your expectation is just not that you're going to be able to control a Teams call directly with ZoomOSC, but that you're going to do some lifting, to help control that, I think there's definitely something that could be done. And if you make it, please let me know. I'd love to show it off.
Back to you, Alex. That's it.
We did it. That was amazing. I think we did 50 or 60 questions. It's amazing. It's thanks, Andy.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a lot of data.
Rock, dude.
Yeah, everyone, big hands for Andy there. That just rocked it. So thank you so much. And I think it just makes a big difference to be able to fill in all these gaps. I mean, we've got some great videos. We've got people talking on Discord, but it doesn't replace us, me having you just talk through some of those things. So really, really great work, Andy. Do you have anything else you want to let people know as we go into the next week?
Yeah, be sure to check in on the available documentation. Watch the videos, watch read the paperwork first. It's much easier for me to help folks if they're starting from this foundation of, yes, I'm familiar with all the information that's available at this time, and I have this question that builds on top of that. It'll just help me get to the answer right away without having to ask you, a bunch of primer questions to figure out what, have you checked out all the prerequisites. And then the other thing I'll ask, and there have been, especially the past couple of days, Guy and Tlaloc and Tucker have been really helpful about this, but I am running out of time to be able to respond to direct messages. I'm just getting swamped. So the best way for us to collaborate as a group is to talk in open channels, so that if I can't get to your answer, somebody else can get to it as well. We're building the knowledge base now, and I think that we're getting to a point where other members of office hours are going to be able to handle some questions from other folks, and that makes this a lot more manageable for us.
It's definitely the intention of this from an office hours perspective is to get as much information from Andy as far as, us getting our heads around it. And then we have a large number of people inside of Discord and inside of the membership. And every time we do breakout rooms, I'm not going to do a post show. I'm just going to break this meeting into breakout rooms in a second. But there's always going to be there's literally going to be a ZoomOSC, at least for this next month. There's always going to be a ZoomOSC room in every pre-show and every post-show. There's links at the bottom of our emails that go out that give you the pre-show and post-show, but there'll always be a room that you can jump into there to discuss it every single day if you want to talk to somebody. I mean, if there's enough people to do that, but then use Discord to answer questions. My request for those of you who are getting ahead of this and starting to figure it out is to check Discord in office hours and look at those questions and see what you can answer. Answering those will help everyone. And again, as we keep on getting more and more people within the group that get a strong understanding, first a basic understanding, then a strong understanding, we all will benefit from that over time. We can't. This is the. I talked about HLS streaming yesterday. On the second hour. This is building a strong edge. Like a lot of edge servers, as opposed to going back to the origin. So think of Andy as the origin, and we can't have everybody go back to the origin server. We need people to go out to the edge. So what we're hoping is that a lot of you start forming that edge, which is that you're going to take on most of the questions that are coming in, and simple ones when people are having issues that don't require Andy, don't have him answering all those. And again, I do request that. Try not to have direct, unless you absolutely have to, get them into the general Discord discussion about ZoomOSC. And if people have suggestions, if there's an issue with, I'm happy to build, given the number of people involved, if it makes sense to build a category and then channels, I'm happy to break that out a little bit, rather than just have a channel that's ZoomOSC. So if people have suggestions about that, I'm happy to give it more space inside of the office hours Discord. You just got to let me know what structure you think would make sense, and we can talk about that inside of the RFI channel. Anything else, Andy?
Just thank you. I mean, I'm really excited to see this week.
So
this week is where things kind of take a real turn, I think, because now you've got it. You've got the forward direction going. Now we're going to get this bi-directional thing going, and we're going to start having a lot of automation. So that's where things are going to start to run themselves, and I think it will become very, very powerful from here. So I'm excited for this next week and seeing what you guys make.
And do the best you can to try to get through the. Even for me, my production was a little crazier this week than I did, so I got to catch up. But do the best you can to try to do this. You're not going to have a lot of these discussions will make a lot more sense if you're actually doing them. So anyway, thank you again, Andy. Thank you to everyone who's coming, part of this huge conversation about ZoomOSC. And hopefully we'll see you each week and see you in Discord. Again, I'm not going to break it into a post show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the rooms now so you guys can meander around. There's some breakout rooms that you can just go into that are ZoomOSC if you want to keep talking about that. But there's also just other rooms if you don't feel like talking about you at ZoomOSC and you all just want to talk. So anyway, one of the rules that we do have as we go into this is do not go into a room. The only room that you can have, this is for all of you new to us, the only room you can have your window closed is in the main room. So if you go into a sub room from a security perspective, you cannot leave your camera off. So you have to turn your camera on if you're going to go into a sub room. And so, just as a note, and it's just something that we can't see everything at that point. If one of our moderators sees you in another room with your camera off, you'll probably get kicked out. So just letting you know, it's not a guarantee, but just knowing that don't take it personally. It's just a policy. So we're not doing it to be mean. Go ahead, Roscoe. You can't. Oh, and I'll turn that back on. Hold on. We'll let you unmute yourself now. There you go. And
okay.
I'll turn on.
Do you want any of our ZoomOSC instances to also be named after ourselves? So if I'm running a ZoomOSC instance, do you want my name in there?
Yeah. If you can put your name in it, that'd be great. And we're all figuring this stuff out. Another thing to know is that we're going to send out in the email, we're going to send out a link connected to this. We're going to build we've already built it, another instance of Mukana that is we're going to put up next week. And what that's going to allow you to do is start asking questions and chatting amongst yourselves live all week. So you can just ask questions and put them in there and be voting on questions and so on and so forth throughout the week. We're going to experiment with it. We haven't done it before. But that just means that you don't have to wait until Saturday to put the question in. You can just put it in as you go and vote on them. It's kind of an idea that we have. Go ahead, Mickey.
YouTube is still up. If we want